Hello and welcome to Then and Now, a conversation with Hosea. Today is day number 9 of about 26 days or so. My name is Derek Hovind. I'm the pastor at Salem Lutheran Church in Orlando, Florida. We are reading through the whole book of Hosea, every verse of every chapter, and along the way, wrestling with some of what this would have meant in Hosea's time, and then turning those reflections towards our day and letting Hosea put some questions before us. Yesterday, we started into chapter 4, and today we pick up at verse 4 of chapter 4 and read the middle part of the chapter. Yet let no one contend, and let none accuse, for with you is my contention, O priest. You shall stumble by day, the prophet shall also stumble with you by night, and I will destroy your mother. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, because you have rejected knowledge. I reject you from being a priest to me. And since you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children. The more they increased, the more they sinned against me. They changed their glory into shame. They feed on the sin of my people. They are greedy for their iniquity. And it shall be like people, like priests. I will punish them for their ways and repay them for their deeds. They shall eat but not be satisfied, and they shall play the whore but not multiply, because they have forsaken the Lord to devote themselves to whoredom. Again, here in chapter 4, this infidelity kind of language is focused on the worship that the people of Israel carried into the spaces of worshiping the god Baal and these other Canaanite gods. And in this particular chapter, the criticism that has started in chapter 1, carried into chapter 2 and into chapter 3, now very narrows its focus to the space of the priests. We've already seen that the monarchy is foreseen to fail and that there's some criticism of those sorts of political systems, but this is a very explicit criticism of the priests and the ways that they have interacted with the people. The idea that the people have been destroyed for lack of knowledge. What does it mean to know God is a good question here. We talked about this a little bit one of the previous days. Some of it is cognitive understanding about what we learn about God. Some of it is a covenantal understanding of worshiping in community and being part of a relational group that connects with God. But there's also sort of a commitment part to knowing God, that we continue to tell the story, and through our relationship with the community of faith, that community has an opportunity to introduce other people into the stories of our faith that can draw them into that same sort of community. So this lack of knowing that the people have in this 4th chapter is put on the priests as the ones who have failed. One of the other accusations here in verse 8, it says, they feed on the sin of my people. They are greedy for their iniquity. If you think about sacrifices perhaps brought to an altar and burned as part of practices of religion, and then the priest perhaps eat some of that meat that has been cooked or those grains that have been brought, if those are offerings that are brought forth as offerings to remediate sin, if the priests are eating well, then God can say they are feeding on the sin of my people. And if the priests have failed to teach the people and led them down those paths, then not only are they guilty of being poor teachers and priests, but also of taking advantage of it for their own gain as they go along. So the critique here of the priests is sharp, and it is not just of the priests, right? We get this also then in verse 9, it shall be like people, like priests. So the people are being accused and criticized, but the priests for their leadership are in that same space as well. So if Hosea is criticizing the religious leadership of the day for not leading the people into a proper relationship with God, that then can put a question before us. And it's not a hard connection to make in this particular chapter. We live in a time where there are lots of people who would identify as spiritual but not religious. Others who identify as what we would call nuns, that they have no religious affiliation. And so the question that Hosea can put before us as people of faith is we might ask, in what ways have we, like the priests and people of Hosea's day, perhaps gotten away from the core of our faith, the stories of our faith, and made it difficult for people to connect not to the institution of religion, but to connect to God through the relationship that we as a faith community live into with our relationship with God. So what ways do we get in the way of people connecting with God? That's a very contemporary and tough question to wrestle with, and I leave you to that on this 9th day. Thank you for joining me, and we will be back tomorrow to finish up chapter 4 in day 10.